Okay, I believe it's 8 o'clock in the UK. Due to the nature of today's show, I have to keep saying UK, but it's ResourceFULL number 2. My name's Tom Manners. I am on Twitter at @Manomatics. That's me without the COVID beard. Whether it stays or not when we get back to normality, God knows. Thank you for tuning in. What I want to introduce myself, if I may. I've got the privilege of training teachers at Arthur Terry Teaching School in the West Midlands in England. An absolute joy. I love doing it because it keeps me up to date with research. It keeps me up to date with the latest news and websites and how we're doing better across the world. Because, of course, we've got to do academic research and academic writing. If you do want to train to be a teacher, that's the place to do it. And today, obviously, we are going to be interviewing Robert from across the pond. And I found out about this by doing work with the NCTM. I'm a professional development lead for them. 2 days a week, I work for myself, if you like, visiting schools. I'm fortunate that schools let me in to go and see them. But I also do the NCTM Teaching for Mastery course. I'm one of the specialists, and I always put mastery in inverted commas because it's a word that we can all argue about. And I do want to quickly remind you, if you know nothing about the maths hubs, please go and sign up. There are 40 of them across the country, and it really, really changed my thinking. And it really gave me opportunities. And I did not know about the website we're featuring today until I started doing these courses with the maths hubs. So they have 5 ideas for teaching for mastery from the NCTM there. And just to let you know, on a Friday morning between 10 and 11, I'm going to be covering those for primary and secondary teachers. And this week, variation with my friend Faye. She's one of the primary teaching for mastery specialists. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. However, we've only got the hour because I promised these things are going to be a series of hour-long interviews. So I can't talk for any longer. I need to get straight into it. But I do need to remind you that you can ask questions and give any statements and ideas on the YouTube chat. Please do so. Keep it friendly. And of course, you can do it on the hashtag as well. Hashtag ResourceFULL. And of course, I'm at Manomatics. We'll try and pay attention to the Twitter and the YouTube chat as well. However, with that all in mind, I'm hoping you'll be able to see everything on screen because it occurred to me, we started. I haven't shared everything. Producer Adam, can you help me out? Have I shared anything on screen so far? Is this just me talking the whole time?
It is just you talking.
Brilliant.
The time.
Brilliant.
I was wondering whether you're going to put a PowerPoint up, but I didn't know.
That means I must have been that engaging. That's fine. In which case, let's just get on to it anyway. My guest, Adam, you go away. You're not important because come on down. Robert Kaplinski of openmiddle.com. How you doing, Robert? You are muted, by the way, just so you know.
It's nice to know that the Price is Right theme has made it across the pond.
I was going to ask you that. Brilliant, because I in the 80s, Leslie Crowther, come on down. And so exactly the same. That's so cool. Exactly what I was thinking. Robert, the technical hitches already where I've not shared a single thing on screen. The rest of it will be smooth. It will be great. Don't you worry.
Fantastic.
But thank you very much for doing this. I'm so pleased you've turned up because being 8 hours apart, I checked over and over to make sure we were going to be doing the right time as each other. But we're good. We're here. We're live. And again, all that YouTube chat stuff, please do send your messages and questions to Robert throughout this. Robert, let's get started because you've created a website that's so good for developing conceptual fluency. In fact, at this stage, I will share my screen because I'm going to go to the back of your book. And there's just a lovely quote on the back of it here. This book is an amazing resource. This website is an amazing resource for those teachers striving to help students develop both procedural fluency and conceptual understanding. Now, the book really was good. It broke down how to use the resource so well, but hopefully we'll cover a lot of that today. But first and foremost, tell us about yourself if you could and your journey to where you are now.
I guess I'll say I didn't start off hoping to become a teacher. I was a programmer back in 2000 before, my gosh, I can't even say the last economic recession anymore. But back before a different one, the whole dot-com bust ended, and I eventually became a teacher, both math and science, eventually just mathematics. One day I became a teacher specialist. So I was supporting math teachers in my school district, teaching mathematics. And really, I enjoyed that because when you're in your classroom, you learn a lot, but you learn so much. Like I literally got paid to work with other teachers who knew a lot more than me. And so I would learn from them and I would try things out. And I got paid to learn with other teachers, which was really, I guess, the best 8 years of my teaching career. So that's really kind of where it took me to. And just in trying to figure out how to do that, you learn here where kids are struggling and how do we find or create a resource that will meet their needs better. So that's kind of really my story in education.
It's so you're absolutely right. It's such a joy to go and watch other lessons. As much as I enjoy being in the classroom myself, I'm probably the same. I enjoy watching other lessons. I enjoy talking, teaching, and that's why these interviews have started coming about. Really, because I love talking about the resources and what challenges come in the lesson. And we're not going to shy from them. We're not going to say everything about this is easy, because it's not. And I know you put it in the book as well. I've got it to my left, by the way. That's why I'm just pointing in that direction.
I mean, I would say every lesson I've ever made was amazing. And then I used it and I found out not so much. And you kind of start to realize like everything makes sense in theory. And then you try it and you realize, oh, it doesn't work here. I didn't set this up well. And so I think the practice of it really gives you grounding.
And well, there's an expression I've always been told, you fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And I think with these resources, that's the theme of the book, and that's the theme of how to use the website. We talked about that in the last episode of this for the More Same Less website. If you don't do the maths yourself, you are going to struggle to deliver, maybe to gather what's going to come back from the kids. But I want to hand over to you. Obviously, I'm going to keep asking questions, but I want to know more about the website, because many of us in the UK, but it is an American website. Many of us might not know about it, but the way of just challenging children, and one question can last a whole lesson. I think these are fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to this, Al. So thank you again, Robert, for doing this.
Yeah, and thank you for having me here. I would say, kind of building upon what you were talking about, that I would go even further with what you said. So when I do a problem and think, oh, this is like, if I do a problem correctly on my first try and think, okay, I'm sure kids will use this strategy. In short, I'm screwed, because the day of the lesson, I promise you, not every single kid's going to get it right and use my strategy. So my best case scenario is like, I'm only, treading water and struggling a little bit. But the reality is that when you make mistakes and you get stuck, and then you see those same students, other students making that same mistake, you feel like a ninja. Like, okay, I know why they're stuck. I know how to get unstuck, and I'm ready to help them. And so I've just found that some of the strategies that I'm really a fan of make me feel like I've taught a lesson 3 or 4 times before I taught it for that first time. Like first period, or I'm not sure what you call it abroad in the UK, but the first time I teach a lesson in a day, it's like shaky. But by the second, third, fourth, I feel like I'm an expert at this.
The rhythm,
so
yeah.
Having that experience before you even teach it for the first time is not like, sometimes you have these amazing moments and you wish, oh, I wish I could have done that another class. But with the right kind of preparation, you can't have those moments consistently in all your classes.
So actually, doing it yourself, you're absolutely right. But I suppose if you were to do it with your team, with your department, and actually doing these tasks, and that's where you're going to get the different resources, the different ideas and suggestions, because so then you're prepared for it as well.
I think you'll find better results in less time, because I struggle sometimes to think about other ways to solve the problem. I just get stuck, and this is the way I think about it. This is the way I conceptualize it. And then another teacher will be like a totally different way. And I'm like, oh my God, I never even thought about doing it that way. And so you get a variety of more mistakes, a variety of more correct strategies. And then when you're teaching a lesson, it's less about figuring out what the hell is going on here, and more, okay, yeah, that's what she was doing. That, okay, and you just know what to do. You feel like you're conducting a symphony rather than just like trying to listen to each of these different instruments and figure out what they're playing.
But that's actually the same as pupils as well, though, because pupils will have their one preferred method. And, again, a theme from the book, and something I'm sure we'll talk about this hour, is a lot of conversation going on. The richness of the conversations are probably the most, it's the conceptual understanding that we're striving for, and having those conversations and listening to each other's open ideas and saying, okay, that's how you went about it. That's how you went about it. What's the same? What's different? You've got a real opportunity to learn from each other. And yet we've got to put ourselves in the shoes of the pupils sometimes. That we've got our preferred method, which is always the way for students. But actually knowing the other methods as well is really invaluable.
Yeah, I mean, kind of building upon what you said, I will say that naively, when I first started teaching, I thought that the end of the problem was when you got the answer. What I didn't understand, if I could give advice to, more naive Robert, it was getting the answer is just a sign that you're now ready to talk about the strategies that you use to get that answer. And maybe that's actually a good segue into why the website is called Open Middle.
Let's do it.
If you think about a problem, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I'm going to spoil treasure hunt stories for all your listeners. Here's how it goes. Every treasure hunt story begins with they get a map. Every treasure hunt story ends with they get the treasure. So why do we care? It's because we're really curious about what will happen in the middle, what happens along the way. And so if you think about it, the treasure hunt stories have a closed beginning, they have a closed ending, but they have an open middle. And that's the part that's interesting. And in math, we have similar things. I think we sometimes say, I love open-ended problems, when really what we mean is we love open middle problems. So let me unpack that. If you have problems where everyone starts with the same beginning and ends with the same answer, then your beginning and end are closed. Now, sometimes the middle is closed too. It says, solve using this method. And those problems are just painful. But sometimes there are a lot of ways to solve it. And then you can talk about how, like, I added repeatedly and you multiplied and someone else drew a picture, and then how are those connected? So we're not saying that we only use problems that have open middles and closed beginning and end. Sometimes actually they do have open ends and there are multiple answers, but every single problem has an open middle where there are multiple ways to solve the problem, and it leads to interesting conversations. And so maybe, would it be helpful if I shared an example of a problem on open middle that I really loved to kind of get people interested in it? So here's the open middle website. It's openmiddle.com. It's everything on there is completely free. So my favorite problem for people who are just getting started is this one. You can search for the number 1,000, and it's called close to 1,000. So let me share this problem with you. And what I want you to realize is, like, you can be an Oxford PhD in mathematics, and I promise you're not getting this 3rd grade problem right on the first try. So let's talk about it. It says, using digits 1 to 9 exactly 1 time each, place a digit in each box to make the sum as close to 1,000 as possible. So you've got 9 digits, and you're going to use all 9 of them. But where do you place them? Like, you could go 1, 2, 3 and make 123, 4, 5, 6 and make 456, 7, 8, 9 and make 789. But is 123 plus 456 plus 789 the closest you can make to 1,000? So, like, you can simultaneously be a master at 3-digit addition and then think, oh gosh, like, all right, well, what number should I pick? And then you have this agony when you get close and you're like, what digits are you going to swap? And then you swap and now you're farther from 1,000. And so what you find is that this problem has a closed beginning. Every single person starts with this problem. This problem has a closed ending. There's exactly one right answer. But it's got an open middle because there are various ways of thinking about it. You could just guess and check, like picking numbers out of a bag. If you're really good, and kind of talking about what you were mentioning earlier, that quote from the back of the book, the difference between procedural skill and conceptual understanding, you could be a 3-digit addition rock star. And I want you to think about this. What if every single time you pick digits out of a bag and randomly place them? Like, just randomly pick. You're going to be freaking doing this problem for a very long time because you could be amazing, but if you don't have conceptual understanding and start thinking about what digits would be better or worse to place here or there, you're doomed. Like, if you put a 9 in the hundreds place, like, good luck to you because you're never going to get that close. And so you have to start thinking about place value and what the implications are. And so it's basically, this problem makes procedural skill alone wildly inefficient. And so rather than saying you must do this, kids do it because the pain of not using conceptual understanding is too great. So I'll kind of pause here, but we have problems like this for virtually every single subject in mathematics, from the youngest children through calculus, and it's a lot of fun.
I think that's one that you recommend in the book as well as kind of the intro task, because as you say, the rich conversation's there, and it'd be really nice with tiles. And I started making my own -9 to 9 grid, and I was trying to make the right size, and I printed it. And then I saw that you've already got these PDFs on your website. I swear.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago that we added it, but we do have them for 0 to 9 and -9 to 9. Sometimes one of the common things that happens is that, like, a kid will use the number, like 333 plus 333 plus 334. Not exactly what we intended as an answer. But yeah, I think that what's really important to understand about this particular problem is that the math feels doable. Like, it doesn't feel like you are overwhelmed that they just use these big complex things, but at the same time, it's not something that you get right on your first try. And at the same time, you kind of want to, like, you feel like you can do better and you want to do better. So you'll have kids, if you show this to a kid and then you say, no, we only have 5 minutes, we gotta move on. The kid's like, no, I want more time. And so you've got mathematics that's more challenging that kids love. And it's important to point out that, here's a question I want you to think about if you're listening for the entire interview, which is this, and really beyond. What does it say about a child who can absolutely crush 3-digit addition, but cannot solve this problem? Like, where does that child sit in terms of your spectrum of totally lost to totally good? Like, the fact that they can be a human calculator, but can't really understand the implications of why they're choosing what they're choosing, I think that's a bad thing. And I think that a lot of times the problems that we've been given in our textbooks and that we used when we were children don't do a good job of revealing these hidden misconceptions. So what I say in the book and what I've come to believe is that when we ask superficial questions, we get superficial information back about what children know. And I can promise you, I was freaking good at asking superficial questions. And I thought I was amazing. And then you later find out that all your kids have misunderstandings you were unaware of.
I started talking about it as performance versus learning. You can perform a task and then you get it back in the classroom. You think you're a great teacher. When 6 weeks later, you're testing them on it. And again, it's the understanding. And that task, you're absolutely right. If they can do that, that's great. But if they can't actually understand that one, now that was a depth of knowledge 3. And that's not something that's common term knowledge over here. I think we'll leave that a little bit later on. But you've got your depth of knowledge levels, which is an interesting research paper. So introducing these kinds of tasks to the class. Now, that's a good entry point, I'd have thought, for many year groups. Again, as you've just pointed out, there are tasks going all the way back from kindergarten. And I will mention this now. There's somebody on Twitter who's trying to put your resources into the English key stages. That's bound to be a question that someone from England's watching when they see all the things at the top. So that's going to be really useful for people. What do you think is the start point to encourage these kind of tasks in the classroom? How do we get the best out of the kids? Because you're right, it becomes that intrinsic, I want to get this, but how did you get to there?
I think that, how I got to there was when I was a middle school teacher, I taught these students who on the end of the year state test had the highest kind of scores you could have. And by all the measures, I was a pretty freaking awesome teacher. And then I leave the classroom and I go teach these same students at our high school that they were middle school, now they're high school. And I'm teaching a lesson on the stuff that I had taught them in middle school about slope. This was now point slope form in high school. And they don't know this stuff. And they're like, well, we never learned about slope. And I'm thinking like, what the hell is going on here? Like, sometimes they say like, oh, our teacher never taught us that. And it's like, maybe, but this is freaking BS because not only did I teach it to you, but you were proficient or advanced on this test. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out like, how the hell does this happen? Like, how do I get to this place where by one metric, I'm amazing but by another, which is I'm actually trying to teach them, I am not. And it just really set me on this journey of there has to be something I'm not getting. And I don't know what that is, but I'm determined to find out. You mentioned that sometimes on a test, you see they did poorly, but they didn't do poorly on my test because I gave them the problems that were also superficial. So I just had a really poor window into what was really going on. Like I wish I had X-ray vision into what they were thinking. So in terms of starting point, I think there's really 2 perspectives, starting points for teachers and starting points for students. I think the starting point for teachers is like, why the hell would you want to use this? There's already so much to do. There's already so little time. There's so many demands. Why this? And I think that I have these depth of knowledge matrices, really these matrices that show you what a problem looks like at different grade levels. Let me actually try to pull it up here. Let's see. Okay. And I think that what you can see is that you can compare these problems. So let's pick one. I have them for lots of different grade levels, but let's pick one, let's say for...
Let's not go too difficult. It might be midday over there, but it's quite late at night here. We kind of complicated maths, if that's okay. So 3rd grade, I should be okay.
So let's look at that problem that we just did. This is the common version of problems like that, right? We see this, we give this to kids, they rock it. All right, let's move on to the next thing. But then we start thinking, what if there are gaps? Like right here, it's a similar problem, except you have to make the sum twice. One where the sum is greater than 700 and one where there's less. All right, well, I mean, you would think that if a child deeply understands adding 3-digit numbers, they probably should be able to get this one right. And then you start using it and you start realizing, wait, not everyone can get this right. And what does that mean? And then you try a more challenging one and you realize even more kids can't do it. And I think that where do you start for teachers is checking out these matrices and finding the one for what you teach and going down the columns and starting to realize, oh crap, like, can I be real? I've made countless problems that I can't solve. And I'm like, oh crap, what does that say about my own conceptual understanding when I can't even solve the problem I made? And you start to realize, again, I was a math major at UCLA. By that definition, I'm pretty good at math, but by the one that actually seems to count, I feel like a fake. I feel like an imposter. And so I think that teachers, where they start is trying these problems out for themselves to realize that there's a really good chance that your students don't understand what you teach them as well as you think they do, as well as you'd hope they do. And that, going back to that superficial question thing, if you are only using this kind of question and nothing like this, you have no idea what your kids really know.
But there's a place
where I would say they would start.
For those depth of knowledge ones, so that example there with you adding 3 digits, there's a place to be doing 2 or 3 of, well, 3 or 4 of those, 5 or 6 of those, maybe no more for to just.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's certainly not my intention to say never use these. Mm-hmm. What I am, if I can call old Robert out, it was only use these. Use 60 of these for classwork, 60 of these for homework. But the reality is, after 3 or 4 of these, like, what more do you know about what they know? Otherwise, they're just repeating the same mistake over and over again. Once you're sure that they can do this after 3 or 4 of these, try one of these. You're going to get so much more information about what they know. And I mean, it can revolutionize things because kids are not bored. And if you assign it for homework, there's not a whole lot of parents complaining about having one problem assigned. So it feels tangible. It feels doable. So it's a great option. And really, it was just something I was completely missing in my own practice.
There's an expression that I use a lot, and as soon as I've read it, it's got to the point where I've put it on a Post-it and I leave it to the side of my wall because I use it so often. Memory is the residue of thought, i.e. it sticks if you've really had to think about it. And those depth of knowledge question 1, there's no thinking. It's just doing, repeating, doing, thinking. And as soon as it gets to those second 2 levels, the second and the third, they've really had to think about it. And we now know more about cognitive load theory. We know more about the brain works. We know it's making connections and it's going to more likely to stick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say there's never any thinking, but like, I'll give you an example. Think about 99 plus 46.
Okay.
If you have no conceptual understanding, then you're like 99, put the 4 and the 6 under that, 6 plus 9. If you have conceptual understanding, you were done practically after I said the problem because you said, well, 99 is basically 100. So if I take 1 from the 46 to make a 45, it's 100 plus 45. And so I'm not gonna lie. you can use conceptual understanding on these really basic problems, but I will say that there's a big gap between the way we teach children to do math and the way we actually do that math in our own lives. And I think part of that gap, what explains it is just conceptual understanding and do you have it or not? And really early on, I wasn't trying to make students with conceptual understanding. I was trying to make really good math robots who could pass standardized assessments. So I'm not proud of it, but I'm going to be honest about where I've come from.
Can we go back then to the introduction of these tasks into the classroom then? Because the first time they see it, if they haven't seen this kind of thing before, there's going to be nerves. I know you've got a strategy. You've talked about it in the book. And I think you shared some of the files of how you can do that on the website as well. So
yeah,
what's the strategy to get the kids to break down what they've done and to be open to it?
So the first thing is don't use your grade level content. When you're first using it, the idea of placing a digit in a box and not repeating a digit and this optimization, like find the greatest, find the least, find the closest to, all that's kind of weird. And really, I would have that 3-digit addition problem be used for virtually every single grade level that can do 3-digit addition, whether you're calculus or not, because it feels tangible, but it's also not something you tend to get right on your first try. And it really helps lay the foundation of You're not going to get right on the first try. It doesn't mean that you're an idiot. It means that these are kinds of problems that are challenging, that everyone makes these mistakes, that you may not actually know. Like, one of the funny things is, like, what if you get 974 and you're like, is that the closest you can get to 1,000? How the hell do you know? You know, unless you get exactly 1,000, and I'm purposely not going to tell your listeners what the answer is, unless you get exactly 1,000, how do you know? And my favorite thing just to walk in the room is just to be kind of a jerk and be like, gosh, that is really close. I don't know. I mean, how can we tell if you can get closer? And the kids are just like, oh, okay. Because they want, usually there's this right answer, and it's obvious when you get it. And you have kids fighting each other. Wait, you got 974, I got 978. And then it's like, oh, and then they go back. And now kids are doing math because they have a desire to do math. So to answer your question about getting started with students in class or digitally, since a lot of times we're not in class right now with the pandemic, it would be to pick a problem well below their grade level. Really, literally that third grade problem. If you're a kindergarten, first grade teacher, I'd pick something even lower than that. If you go to the Open Middle website, let me kind of jump back here. If you go to the Open Middle website, a really great place to begin is actually on the homepage. It says, get our favorite problem. So it's our favorite problem from every grade level. So I would pick, so if you click on this, you can enter your information and it'll email it to you. I would pick the lowest grade level or the highest grade level that you're absolutely confident they could do. But I would say really, actually, I'm going to revise what I said. Pick that third grade, but if the third grade problem they can't do, then maybe go down to second, first, or kinder. But you want them to have resounding success. You will have, if you go on Twitter, if you're on Twitter, look for the hashtag #WhyOpenMiddle, WHY.
Okay.
Yeah, WHY Open Middle. And you will see lots of teachers who have just shared like resounding successes, whether they're, you know, young children or calculus or everywhere in between. And so kids love it. They don't want to stop doing it. It's just really different than a lot of the math I had used when I was a teacher, which was like you do it to them almost like you're inflicting some sort of punishment.
And do you know what you said about the pupils beating each other? I can't think what the problem was, but I saw one that you'd posted. And then another teacher said, well, my class got a better answer than you. And that's really, really nice. And it's also nice for us as teachers to remind ourselves of that as well, because we always feel, certainly when I'm training teachers, and I feel it myself, I feel I should have to know everything, but that's not the case. It shouldn't be the case. And you shouldn't necessarily know the most efficient way or the best way. You know, we're forever learning, and actually seeing somebody beat your answer, I think you replied, it's like, oh, that's brilliant. Because
yeah, I'm gonna
set it to a class and another class beat it.
So I'm going to show you guys all a problem right here. It's a 6th grade problem, and it's going to give you guys like existential crisis. So look at this one right here. Using the digits 1 to 9 at most 1 time each, fill in the boxes to make 2 fractions that have a quotient that is as close to 4/11 as possible. Now here's the reality. When I made this problem, I didn't have a damn clue if my answer was like good, bad, the best, and I didn't even know how to figure it out. And so, like, really, how do you know? Like, I promise you, you could spend all night or all the next day and still not know. And so countless times, I mean, many, many times, I posted what I thought was the best answer because it was the best I was able to find. And there's, like you said, like, my 5th graders found a better answer than you. And like, you could be like, well, that doesn't feel good, but it's actually freaking awesome because those 5th graders are going to remember the time that they were smarter than the guy on the website. And it's going to help students understand that like math is not something that's done and dead, and that, you know, everything you could possibly figure out has already been figured out. It's something that people are still trying to figure out, and you can be a person who's part of that process. And so I love it. There are quite a few, if you really dig deep into Open Middle, where it says answer coming soon, because I haven't a freaking clue how to figure out what the best answer is. So it's easier sometimes to make a good question than it is to find the answer to that question, is what I'll say.
I know people contribute to the website as well. And you said about hashtag #WhyOpenMiddle. Before doing tonight, I'd actually just done hashtag Open Middle, and you've got teachers creating their own questions, sharing them online. I think some pupils as well sharing their own questions. It's really awesome. Adam, is anything coming on the YouTube chat it would be of interest here?
Not at the moment, but I think that's because everyone is just fascinated by the open middle. I've been like flicking between the YouTube video and your website. And as Tom said, it's just amazing to see so many people contributing to it. And
I mean,
yes,
on Twitter, I've got somebody saying that Robert Krabinsky is every teacher's math crush list.
Can you just put that oxymoron in perspective? Like when you thought math and crush would go together in the same sentence, like how the hell have we got into that place?
We're growing.
What's that?
We're growing. We're a cool breed now.
Yes, now we're cool. But you know, I think we cross the threshold where more of the problems on the site are from people that I don't know than from people. I mean, maybe I've built relationships, but people that like I don't have any day-to-day connection with. And the fact that, I mean, like, can I blow your mind? What if one teacher from every district submitted one problem? I mean, in the United States, in Canada, in England, we'd be done, right? And so there's a lot of potential here. And I'm really excited just to see this. I mean, one of the things I feel is like an absolute honor to be talking to you right now, Tom, is really like, it's incredibly validating to know that what I'm working on in California is making a difference to teachers, you know, across the pond. So
it really is. And I saw you put a list up of the contributors, and Emma McRae was there. And when it talks about math crushes, she's definitely one of mine. She's a brilliant teacher educator over here. I saw Robert Krabinsky, then I saw the name Owen Krabinsky. Now, I just want to check something, because in the start of your book, you dedicate it to your son, Owen. Has your son contributed tasks to this website?
He actually has a lot of problems on the site.
How old is your son? Just to check.
He's now 12, but he's been making problems since, and he's actually got some damn good problems. Let's see if we can find them real quick. Yeah, it's pretty damn humbling, but at the same time, he's like the son of a nerdy math teacher, so like you can't be that surprised. But let's look. He's got, let me share the screen here. He's got a lot of problems actually. Subtracting decimal. So I think if I'm being honest, let's see, how do I phrase this? Sometimes he doesn't feel challenged and he starts, rather than become a nuisance in class, I've been like, why don't you make the problem that you wish you were solving? But like here's one that he's made that was really hard for me, adding fractions to get one. So it's really just him going back through, like when he was in 5th grade, you know, he's making this problem. And if you start thinking like, what? I mean, you can have procedural skill and just start hammering at this. But me, my conception or sending is like, what denominators would I even want to play here? Like if you pick a 7, good luck, you're doomed. You know, but maybe do I want like a 2 and a 4 and an 8, or maybe a 1 and a 3 and a 6, or, you know, you start to think about what are the implications of it. And actually, no, now that I think of it, if I put a 1 there, then it's far more than 1. And you start to like think about what are those implications. So yeah, I mean, he let me know down here, it's got, what do you call it? The font size is based on the number of problems that you make. And so he's let me know he's coming for me and he's trying to make more problems so his name will be bigger than mine. So,
but you've just created an easy extension in every lesson ever. Create your own of these. It's such a good idea. If the people, yeah, it's such an easy extension to keep them busy. I don't like keep busy, but keep them active, keep them thinking, and keep them challenged. You know, that's a really lovely extension.
I don't disagree with you. What I will say is that you're seeing the pretty parts. You're not seeing the countless problems that we've made that just suck or that have really trivial answers. Like, I'll give you an example. I've made one where like I thought it was going to be good, but like it literally didn't have an answer. Like it was impossible to solve, but I didn't know that. And it was something like, let me see if I actually find one. Because it's actually kind of comical when you see how bad it is and why I didn't notice it. Let's see, I'm sure I can figure it out. Where would it be? It's got to be an elementary one. Anyway, the part of the problem was it was something like it was a blank plus 2 blanks plus 2 blanks, and you had to get an answer that was equal to 31.
I think I read that one randomly.
And so the kids are working on the problem. They're like, this is really hard. We can't do it. I'm like, no, growth mindset. Just keep persevering. You'll figure it out. But the thing is, when you choose 31, even if you put a 1 and a 2 in the tens place, you can't get 31 because everything's gonna be bigger. But I made this. I didn't even think to try the problem out, and I used it with kids for the first time because I'm so damn good at making these problems, only to find out that it's absolutely impossible. And I thought my kids were just quitting. So I'm not saying it's not a bad thing to make problems, but I have found that I prefer to have like good extensions or more additional problems for kids if possible.
We said it half an hour ago. It's definitely worth repeating. You've got to do the tasks yourself.
I have blown myself up. I'll give you another way of blowing myself up. If your kids cannot solve a basic problem, they will be doomed with the open middle kind of problems. So it's not to say like you don't use them to introduce something that they've never even seen before, don't know how to do. But kind of, I guess a good rule of thumb is this: wherever you were planning on doing classwork or homework is a good place for an open middle problem. So if you're getting to classwork, the chances are that you've already gone through how to do a basic problem, and now it's time for them to practice it. But where I used to do like 1 through 60 odd for classwork and 1 through 60 even for homework, now it's like do 1, 2, and 3 for classwork and now use this problem. And then, maybe it's just a different open middle problem for homework.
I'm going to take the screen for a moment, if I may, because what I have...
I was just going to ask a quick question.
Go for it.
So, Robert, how do you introduce this to kind of other teachers, other math teachers, maybe new to their career or maybe really, really experienced? Kind of how did you find introducing it to them and their reaction and kind of building their confidence with using these problems in a classroom?
So what I think the biggest question is why? Like, why? Why do I need to use this? Every single person is peddling their ideas of this is the next great big thing. Why this, right? There's so many other things. And what I have found is that there are kind of 2 ways to accomplish this. One is actually having having teachers sit down and try doing a column or multiple columns of these depth of knowledge matrices, these open middle matrices. And like, pick one. Here's one for, what is this? Algebra 2. So you have the kids, you have the teachers do this and they're like, this is easy. Oh, this is a little bit challenging. Oh gosh, this one's hard. And then they start to realize like, wait, crap, if I am struggling with this, what about my other children? And they start to realize this might be something that was missing, because what happens when you have that student who just rocks what you're teaching them? The general idea has been, okay, give them more work or move them on to the next work or move them to the next grade level. But the reality is that we can absolutely crush students with grade level content and help them go deeper. Like schools in my son's school district want to skip him to advanced material, but I can crush him with open middle problems. So it's not that he knows it all. It's that he's not being given the kinds of problems that show all the gaps in his understanding. So the other thing I'd recommend, if you've got a colleague and you're like, this is great, but how do I get my colleagues to buy in? If you go to openmiddle.com, right here it says want to share with open middle with others. I've got 2 webinars, an elementary version, and a secondary version that I know that, Tom, you have already watched these, and it's called Why We Should Reconsider Using Worksheets and What We Should Be Doing Instead. Spoiler, the instead is open middle. But I've got one that has examples for younger children and one for older children. And I think that this might help make the case for you, because no one's a prophet in their own land. So if you start telling this, they're gonna be like, what do you know? And hearing it from someone else might make them feel more confident in it. I
think your example earlier on, though, Robert, if they can do 3-digit plus 3-digit plus 3 digits being near 1,000, they can do that. But if they couldn't answer that, do they really understand the difference between each of the columns? Why the hundreds is the most important in that question? And so I think it would be really scary if they couldn't answer that. And I would hope that would have the effect that you mentioned there, Adam, trying to sell it to staff. I want to just chat. There's a couple of pages. Now, I've had to take photos of the book and then try and put them into a PowerPoint. So just get it through here. What the tasks may reveal. When these moments happen, when they're unable to do the depth of knowledge 2 and 3, students, it's not a reflection on us. I think this is really important, because I think staff are often a little bit scared of using new tasks like this. We should give ourselves credit, as it says here, for trying to bring these issues to the surface so we can address them. Because they weren't able to answer that question, then they haven't understood it yet. And in England, for the first assessment objective, it says the words conceptual understanding. And I think that's what these problems really do. I think this is a lovely quote from the book.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, if they don't know it, they don't know it regardless. So you either can live in like blissful ignorance, or you can kind of learn about it and have a chance to do something about it. I think too often I didn't know what my students were confused about until it was too late, and I'm on the next topic or they're in the next grade level, and that sucks.
We're a hierarchical subject, and we need to have those foundations building up. There's a couple of other ones I want to share. I'm going to have to slide through these. We talked a little bit already about if we invest time to prepare for students for this time of problem solving, they'll look forward to it in the future. And you mentioned some of the excitement in the classroom. Look at this child here. I remember the student beaming with pride as she realized she'd solved a problem she might normally give up on. So what I want to get to then is scaffolding. And this little site, this quote here, just in time scaffolding versus just in case. And if we've got until another 5-10 minutes before we are looking at other resources together, it might be worth us talking a little bit about that, and also the scaffold you've created that gets the kids to break down their approaches step by step, and what was their first approach, what was their second approach. It's a lovely citation, that just in time, not just in case.
So Julie Diction and her co-authors, they coined that phrase, and I love it. So just to unpack it, just in case scaffolding is, okay, I'm doing this problem. I think kids are going to struggle here. So I'm going to teach everything that they might need to know just in case it's an issue. But the reality is that some kids will need that help, some kids won't, but it's going to mask the real issues, and it's going to mask whether it's even an issue. A lot of times, Dan Meyer uses this lovely metaphor that if math is the aspirin, then what's the headache that ever make them want it? Too often it's just, here are all these pills that one day you might need in case you get sick, but you don't know when you get sick or you don't get sick. So just-in-time scaffolding then is teach a lesson. When you get to that point where they get stuck, now it's a headache that they have that they want to get an aspirin for, so they're receptive to what you have to teach them. It's more work for you because you have to prepare that stuff. Every class might have a different experience, so you may or may not use it. You might be in different places, but I think it's a great way to think about it. In terms of that quote, though, about the child that's beaming, let me kind of share with you what that is in reference to. So one thing you have to know is that your kids are going to want to give up when they're using this, because we have trained them for years and years and years that if you don't get the problem right on their first try, that you're not a math person, you should just give up. I mean, not necessarily in those words, but that's the effect that it has. And so I've got this open middle worksheet. It comes in 3 versions, and now in terms of 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish. And now we have 3 versions, including the Google Docs version. Let's make a copy so you can see it. So the way it works is you've got 6 attempts, right? The front is first, second, and third attempt. The back is fourth, fifth, and sixth attempt. Now, just at a beginning, at a glance, you're like, wait, this is a problem that's probably going to take more than 1 attempt. And if he's giving this to everyone, or if my teacher's giving this to everyone, it's not just I'm dumb, like this is just a different kind of problem. And it starts to normalize that it's okay and normal if you don't get it right on the first try. This is also really important here in this attempt to bridge from extrinsic motivation to intrinsic. So initially I lie to children, and you think I'm joking, but I'm not. And I tell them, so you're going to get 2 points for each attempt and 2 points for each explanation. So I really hope you don't get it right on the first try. Because at the most you're only going to get 4 points. I hope it takes you a few tries. Now, the lie is I never grade these, but the reality is that the kids have this extrinsic motivation. We're like, oh, I want to get more points. So even if you get it wrong, that's actually good, right? You've gotten a better grade. And so kids keep trying. What's important to remember, though, it's not just do the math. It's also like, what did you learn? Like, I'm not saying just guess and check endlessly. It's like, okay, I picked digits that were, going back to that 3-digit addition problem. I picked digits that were too big for my hundreds place. Next time I'm going to try, lesser values for my hundreds place. And then they go here, okay, I picked this, but now I need to figure out which digits to swap for my tens places. And going on, what happened was the child got it wrong in the first try, second, and at that point put a big X and was going to give up, but then realized she could get more points. And I mean, honestly, it was challenging. It was a 4th grade problem in an 8th grade math class. Kind of think that they should get it. It was literally an area and perimeter problem, but they kept trying. She kept trying because she'd get more points, and she got it on her 6th try, and she realized, I can do this. And just like, those are the kinds of moments that we are teachers, we don't get them enough. And it's kind of hard now in this digital age, but that moment when you realize like you really touched a child and you connected with a child, I think is really important. I mean, that's the whole point of teaching in my perspective.
Those worksheets then, I'm wondering, Adam, if they've got any more questions, so shout them out when you've got them. But one thing that immediately came to me was, I would start personally, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that it sounds like it's something you would do as a group or as a pair. It's not individual to start, and try to get them to explain their word and their reasoning as to what they tried, what they learned from it. I would imagine that would be quite challenging to start by themselves. Do you find that these activities eventually become independent, or do you encourage them more to be in pairs or groups?
That's actually, let me unpack that. So let me start with what I failed on. So initially, I let kids work in groups and talk together in the beginning. And I realized in retrospect, I was exercising confirmation bias, and I was only paying attention to the parts that confirmed the good things. So kids are talking, they're on track, they're talking about math. All right, let's talk about the things I was intentionally not thinking about, which is they had no time to think about this on their own. So they're talking about something that they barely understand. They haven't really even tried it, so they don't even really understand the strategy that they want to use. If they all start talking together, what winds up happening is that they all start using the same strategy. So then the conversations later on are really homogenous, because you'll have like each group has one strategy instead of like maybe 12 different strategies. Mm-hmm. So what I am now doing is I'll give students initially individual quiet think time. Now I say to them, I'm going to give you 2 minutes or 5 minutes. I'm not timing it. Here's what I'm doing. It's the face test. If they're, now again, let's be clear, in the digital age, some of these rules will have to be changed. But if 70% of your children are not looking at you or anyone else, they're looking at their paper, then that means that they need more time. So give them more time. If they're all looking around, they're ready to talk. But I have found someone that 2 to 5 minutes of an individual think time at the beginning gives kids enough time to at least get stuck, or to have a better idea of what the problem's asking or what strategies might work. After that, you might do groups of 2, 3 to 4. I wouldn't do more than 4. But then they start having those conversations. But I would actually encourage individual time initially to kind of find your bearing.
Mm-hmm. On Twitter, Amanda's put that the depth of knowledge matrix would be a really good thing for departmental CPD. I'm going to go to another quote from the book, if I may, if I actually know what I'm doing today, and it's working this time, I hope. Do this now. Now, your webinar talks through some of the, and your book in a bit more detail as well, some of the things you should go away and do now. And one is absolutely this: find problems from open middle that we can integrate into our curriculum. And to something I kind of alluded to earlier on, Charlotte, Mrs. Hawthorne 7, she's starting to do it. I think it's her kind of pinned tweet. And I know she's updating it, but she's putting it into a popular scheme of work here, White Rose, along with a lot of other mathematical thinking tasks. So I think this is absolutely do now. Go, for those who are in the heads of department or heads of key stages, just finding some of these to go in there. Don't put them straight into your tests, because I think you learned that one, Robert. You put it straight into the tests, it's not going to work. It's got to be in the classroom first.
Yeah, and if you're looking for problems and you're concerned that you can't find it because the standards are different, you can just search for the topic. Like you can search ratios or subtraction or integration. I don't know, a definite integral, whatever your topic is, and you'll be able to find it that way too. And then once you find that problem, you can click on the standard and it'll show you all the problems that are grouped like that. Even if it's not your standards, you should be able to find similar problems.
Adam, are there any more questions that are coming through, or is this just this kind of moment that people are just thinking?
No, I think you've actually answered all the questions. already. So there was a couple of questions about collaboration or individual tasks, but you've kind of covered that already. So yeah.
In my former life as a BBC radio presenter, which is true, I'm obviously good at practicing these things and knowing what the audience want to hear. The audience might not want to hear the next minute, but the last 9 minutes, and I'm determined to finish by 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock Western time. It's not Western time. What do you call the Pacific time? That's the one. Now I'm going to go back to my screen if I may. And watching your webinar, as you said, you gave the title of it. So just go for, there it is. So further webinar on how to use openmiddle.com. It was definitely worth watching. Why we should reconsider using worksheets. And I had a big grin on my face, Robert, when I saw this, because I think you and I have an immediate same approach to things, because I've got this idea now. 80s music, I'm a big fan. The music failed when I did Resourceful #1. Today, hopefully it's going to work. No jacket required. So Adam's I've told him to come on screen to tell me that the music works this time, because I went for no textbook required. Now I've called this Resourceful, and you're going to tell us some websites that you like, Robert, that you use, and what's going to be really nice about that. I know, as you said, moving into the digital age, I think it's really important. But I like no textbook required, because ignoring that a second, the questions were too repetitive, those worksheets, and that's why you said don't use the worksheets. I got told to change the title, so I went for Resourceful. I want to point out I'm not anti-textbook. I just want teachers to think about the questions that they're asking and why they use them. And exactly what you've said, Robert, that's exactly what I wanted you to do today. Think, what do we want to get out of the questions? So I made my own album cover. I trimmed the beard a little bit, the COVID beard, but the COVID beard only was before then, so I tried another, and there's me. But I couldn't get rid of this no textbook required thing, because it's great fun. So I'm hoping this theme tune will work, because I changed the name to Resourceful, but I couldn't get this theme tune out of my head. So Adam, I need a thumb up from you if this works. There's some mess that's been on my mind. It's all online, no textbook required. Now, Robert, do I keep this? Is it an important part of the Resourceful?
I think that has to be your intro for all of your episodes. That seems like, unless you're going to go Susu Studio, I think you're going to go no textbook required.
Well, it took me a long time to come up. It didn't take me a long time at all. It took me seconds. However, the point of the next textbook, no textbook required section of the hour is there are so many good online resources. And I want to ask everybody that I've got the opportunity to interview, and again, thank you for doing this, tell me your favorite online resources. And I know one that I asked you about, actually, so I said let's include it, because I know you've created a website as well. So can you tell us ones that you use to go and get information, but also tell us about another website of yours?
Yeah, I would say, like, there are 3 websites that I'm really intimately familiar with right now. The first one we talked about a lot today, openmiddle.com. I just think that you can find problems that will fundamentally, like, I'm biased, but I fundamentally believe that this is the single biggest bang for buck change any math teacher can make in her classroom. And a lot of things you can do, and they're great, but this fundamentally changes how students perceive math. So I would check out Open Middle. All the problems, everything on there is free. On my website, one thing that so that's Open Middle right here. My website is robertkaplinsky.com. And so I've got those depth of knowledge matrices. You can just search for DOK matrix and you'll find it here. But another resource that maybe your listeners may or may not be familiar with is I have a lot of real world lessons. I've got, I think, about 70 of them. So these could be, if you're thinking, how do I bring in more authentic context into what I'm teaching? This might be something that your teachers might want to explore. I've found, and a lot of other teachers have found this to be a lot of fun. They're definitely organized by US standards, but I think that you could find what you're looking for as well. I've got, actually, if you go to problems, let's see, problems.robertkaplinsky.com, you can get a error message.
You could type really quickly, but then it went wrong.
Yeah, apparently not. A problem. I think you got to put an S. So put an S there.
Like
Problems.
you should do in maths, but we'll forgive you for saying maths. You know, it does.
You know what? I appreciate your understanding of my inefficiencies. So if you go to problems with an S, I've got them by concept and skill, so that might be a little bit easier for you to browse if you're not sure about the grade level. And finally, I would say one thing I kind of want us to think about, like the really crazy thing about what's going on right now is that, okay, it is a crazy time to be alive right now. Like 2020 has been very challenging in oh so many ways. But here's one thing I hope everyone will think about right now. Expectations for teachers and educations may never be lower than they are right now for the rest of our career. I want you to think about that. Like if you just like, if the students don't catch on fire, if kids show up, like that's all we're expecting right now. It will continue to increase, but like right now, expectations have never been lower. And if you ever wanted to try to reinvent yourself or rethink what you're doing or try something new, I'm telling you, right now is the single, I hope there's no other pandemics coming. So right now, this is the single best time you're ever going to have in the rest of your career. So along those lines, it's, well, how do I do these things, right? And so another thing I'm really trying to rethink is professional development. A lot of times, and you know, you call it CPD, I think one of the challenges with CPD is that it's built so that you meet its needs and not the other way around. So you have to leave class. The topic's already been decided by you, by whomever is running it. You don't necessarily know if that person's really even knowing more on the topic than you do, right? You might have to travel. It may not be as far, but there's travel expenses associated that, and travel may be more challenging for the foreseeable future. So one thing that I have been doing, honestly, I started in 2016, and now it's really kind of coming of age, is this website called Grassroots Workshops, where it's really these flexible online workshops from educators that you choose. So we've got lots of workshops, like for example, it depends on who you're familiar with, but like I just put a mini workshop on how to use an open middle problem. And the idea is, you know, in 2 to 3 hours, you can go from this sounds great, but how do I get started to I'm ready to go on Monday. We also have these bigger workshops. Maybe you've heard of Graham Fletcher, and he does one that really helps you build that conceptual understanding of fractions. So I will say that if you are really looking for high quality professional development that works around your schedule and your needs, this is something we're checking out. If you're interested in being an instructor, I'd love to hear from you too. So that's really the 3 websites that I'm putting a lot of energy into right now that I hope educators will also be really thrilled with, because I think it will become either a resource that they go to or a way that they can learn more.
I mean, I'm determined that these interviews only last an hour, because teachers are busy people, and some are even more stressed than ever because of what's going on. But actually, the beauty of this online stuff is you can go back to it whenever you like. And I'm assuming that would be the same for your course as well. It's not as if you press play and you've got 2 hours and you must pay attention. If you need to go because your child's screaming at you, you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It just doesn't make, I mean, I get that live sounds great in theory, but in practice, like you can't expect everyone to be ready at exactly this moment and have no interruptions. It's just not practical. So you need professional development that works around your schedule, that works at any time of the day or night, whenever you have time. And that's what this is.
Robert, I almost feel guilty that I've kept this to an hour, but I really felt I had to because people are so short of time. I just want to quickly mention that ResourceFULL 3 is going to be Joe Morgan. It came on screen a second ago, so it's not a surprise. It's an amazing website, Robert. There's so many good links to different. What I do like about it, it's sourcing everywhere. But Joe Morgan's written a brilliant book, which is to the left of me as well. And so she's going to join me next week talking about the gems, topics in depth, resource library and stuff as well. That's 8 o'clock next week. The week after that, this is such a strong website, mathspot.com. I don't know, I think, is it Learning Thinking Blocks is a really popular American one I've seen about making the bar models. But for me, just GCSE resources, the strongest thing for this website is the manipulatives. But the fact I've got so many things when I go through question generators, starters and drills, for teachers, it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you to everybody else for tuning in. At Manomatics is my Twitter. But I want to stop share because I want to go back to Robert's face and say, Robert, thank you so much. A reminder, the webinar is really worth watching. The book is really worth buying, and I'll put a link onto it on the bottom of the YouTube page. Or just go onto Amazon. That's how I found it. That's how we find most things. Yeah, I imagine the grassroots thing, we've only scratched the surface today. So you did a 2-hour session with Craig Barton. I know he released that a couple of weeks ago. I know that I've got to go and finish that because I only started it yesterday. But there's so much more to delve into. But I think one of the suggestions we got was really valid. Take that depth of knowledge matrix, take it to your department and have the conversations. I think you said it best. If they're not able to do that second level, what have you taught them? But Robert, a really, really fascinating hour. Thank you so much. Is there anything that the last word should be yours?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. And I just want to say, like, we're doing the best that we can. Like, we weren't taught this way. So just have some grace for yourself, because these are things that we're going to stumble with too, but we should do what we think will be better for our children going forward.
Robert, I would say have a good evening, but for you, it's have a good afternoon. And thank you very much for doing today. I really appreciate your time.